Yeah, according to the BCA, more than 3 police officers a day were assaulted in Minnesota last year. That's higher than years past. Law enforcement leaders say this trend has been going on for years, with officers encountering violence more often while they're out in the community.
We've seen increases that are well above where we were pre-pandemic.
A concerning trend for law enforcement leaders like Jeff Potts. He's the executive director of the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association.
We have a portion of our population that is more violent than it used to be, and we're trying to figure out why that is and what can we do to prevent or limit that violence as much as possible.
The Minnesota BCA tracks assaults against officers, and the numbers show a significant increase over the last decade. In 2017, 419 officers were assaulted in the line of duty in Minnesota. By 2023, the number had tripled to just under 1,200. And it's not just assaults. In 2017, the BCA says police officers were shot at 16 times in the field. Last year, it happened 59 times, nearly 4 times more often.
So many of these crimes where we've seen violent crimes happen, it seems like the offenders have long track records, but yet they're still out and about. And I think that's where we want to focus on. What is the right level of accountability?
Over the same time period, the BCA is reporting fewer officer-involved shootings. In 2020, the BCA says Minnesota police officers fired their weapons in the line of duty 35 times, killing 8 people and wounding 10 others. Last year, police fired their weapons 17 times, killing 7 and wounding 5.
Every agency in the state of Minnesota is trying to figure out how to perfect the art of de-escalating tense or crisis type situations, and we'll continue to do that.
But why are police officers facing more violence on the job? Potts argues one reason is society overall is more violent. Minnesota is seeing some progress in terms of violent crime, but Potts says the numbers are still higher than they were before the pandemic. Potts says he's also hearing about more situations where officers are encountering guns in the community.
And so it seems like we hear about that on a much more frequent basis. I don't have the data to back that up and say we compared to 2019 we're higher, but I'm just saying personally I certainly hear about it more often than we used to.
Potts says law enforcement leaders are searching for an answer to this alarming increase in violence. But at the end of the day,
I don't think we have a great answer to it. I'd love to give you the answer to that. I think we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to continue to train and work with our public safety workforce to better be able to navigate those kinds of calls. But what they're facing out on the street is really concerning right now to all of us.
And this violence against officers is also changing the way that police respond to these emergency calls. Law enforcement leaders say they're using their tactical gear and armored vehicles more often to respond to these violent cases. They say some people will argue that police departments shouldn't have this type of military-like equipment, but leaders do argue that officers are encountering more cases where they need this type of equipment to keep them safe.
Yeah, it makes sense to use it when needed. I can't help but get away from his point about society being more violent because, Gordon, you and I in this news business, we've covered school board meetings, parades, high school basketball games, where we see violence break out more and more and more that we hadn't seen 20 years ago.
Yeah, when he said that during the interview, I kind of, took a step back and going, we're more violent as a society, but then I thought more about it. And like you said, I thought of more stories that we've covered, and it kind of rang true for me to think that we are seeing more violence just kind of everywhere in our everyday lives.
All right, thanks so much, Corey.